Happy New Year, everyone. I've waited a long time to do a video on this game, and my time has come. So I may as well start it off on a good note. Let's talk about it. I talked about the OG Resident Evil 4 as it's considered one of the greatest of all time in the series, and I can't deny it is definitely in my top 3 of the series at this point. However, now that RE4R has been released, where would I place this? Is the OG buried, dead and gone, left in a dust in the past to be forgotten forever? Hell nah. Not at all. Not on my watch. We're just not going to be having that. Anyway, RE4R was an amazing experience. I thoroughly enjoy all the changes that they made, and I even noticed some huge similarities to the newer games in the series. I see all the discussions, the talks, the debates about which is better, the original or the remake. And that's where it might get tough, because RE4R was completely very justice to the original. And it's dope because since I recently played the original, I got the differences in 4K, right? I can see what scenes came first, what scenes came after, what they changed around. It was really cool. I noticed every damn detail, basically. Today we're going to be talking about the crowning achievement of RE4R and why people think the remake is better than the original. Roll them credits.
Lord Sattler.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
Resident Evil 4 is a beloved classic. It even has been regarded as one of the best games ever made. Whether you enjoy horror games or not, RE4 has made its way to your attention at some point, as it's probably the most popular in the series. To be honest, I legitimately played it in Best Buy or something when I was a kid, and I didn't remember it, and I didn't play it until years later, probably about 2 years ago, or fully play it till like 2 years ago. 2-3 year and a half ago. One of them. You get the idea. It single-handedly changed the game and revolutionized the industry, while its predecessors 1, 2, and 3 were revolutionary in their own way, bringing light to the genre of survival horror with new ways of storytelling, gripping pacing, mechanics, gameplay. The original 4 took it to the next level. Next-gen graphics, cinematic cutscenes, a fresh new third-person point of view, stronger aiming system, and better tank controls for a complete package. The original 4 was ahead of its time.
Don't come any closer. Stay away.
Just a note, you can watch my original video on RE4. I'm gonna leave the link in the description down below. Much appreciated. However, when it came to the 4 remake, Capcom took what they did to the original 4 and turned the knob up 100% just because they could. The development of RE4R, note I'm gonna be saying Reefer in the video in original for the original RE4 because ain't nobody got time for that much wordplay. The development of Reefer was definitely a tricky situation. Due to the mega popularity of the original, how dare they actually try and remake this? Like I mentioned before, the constant development of remakes and remasters are often a huge hit or miss during this age. You can see what was dished out the past few years as the GTA Remastered Collection, Warcraft 3 Reforged, 13 Remake, and the terribly rated Resident Evil 3 Remake, the Assassin's Creed Ezio Collection, which, my god, why is there so many? How are you screwing this game up when you got so much in the chamber? How? Ubisoft. Get it together.
Give me, signore. I tried.
What is happening? There are also very good remasters and remakes, such as the Spyro Remake, Dead Space, the Final Fantasy VII Remake, and even the Destroy All Humans remaster. Led by Studio M2, the team consisted of developers that worked on RE2R and was split into 3 sections: Village, the Castle, the Island. Highly focused on the horror elements, the team successfully rebuilt the horror experience. If you think the original is scarier than the remake, you're not entirely wrong. That's just facts. You're not really like off about that, like, cause I've already discussed this. It's kind of weird. There's definitely an element of uncanny valley and distorted elements of older games that can make them creepy, as they've used that older non-polished look to distort their characters' faces, sounds, and anything that can be used to their advantage. Reefer being a modern game, it's used its technological elements to push the envelope. When I first started my playthrough, I realized the beginning reminded me of how RE7 started out. An abandoned, grotesque, grassy path of sacrificial lambs. It's gonna get darker than you're expecting here. It's gonna get dark. Reefer was definitely a lot darker, a lot more eerie. And remember when I said you couldn't see in RE2? Yeah, nah. I didn't have a problem with that. In this game, they did a good job. They did the lighting very well. A+, beautiful. Even in the obviously dark portions of the game where you had to use a flashlight, the illumination was generally perfect. Ultimately, you can really decide to write this off as a technological advantage. Developers weren't creating stuff that looks like this in 2005, but they were definitely making Fatal Frames and Silent Hills. So the ability to make this game scarier was there. They just didn't do it. The original RE4 was very action heavy with horror elements. Reefer was the middle ground that made you kind of want to run, but made you remember, I got guns. I can fight back. Time to get blasted. Upon my research, there was one key element that I wanted to talk about. What was the secret success of either of RE4? Zombies? Yeah. Monsters? It is what it is. It wasn't just the normal infected humans that made this work, but how they worked. In a cult. Hear me out. The definition of the word cult is derived from the French culte, meaning worship, which is derived from the word cultus, meaning to care or cultivate. Going further, cultivate means to prepare and use, which this up even more. Fighting the horde of enemies with no independent thought is hard and terrifying enough, but add blood and gore, mental manipulation. Or in Osmond Sadler's case, full-on mind control, that's a big no. I'm getting the hell out of there, take a hike, I'm getting the next bus off of this fucking island in Spain, or the next plane. Bye-bye. He's able to command these formerly innocent individuals at will, without them knowing if they're in their lives, injuring themselves, or for someone or something they aren't even aware of. It's a matter of hundreds or even thousands of being sacrificed in order for one individual to get his way. There's also the association of isolation and secrecy when it comes to the theme of cults, and allows more of an eerie and mysterious style of storytelling. Wickerman, Midsommar, Children of the Corn, VHS, Cabin in the Woods, there are all few theatrical examples of how this slow build, slow burn style of storytelling that cult themes allow. Not cheesy jump scares, but it teases the fear. As you keep coming across things that make you more and more uneasy, you hate it but love it at the same time. As you progress through the game, you will obviously find sacrificed animals, symbols, ritualistic objects and statues, and even human remains of speculated missing persons. Which, that's a new feature, man. That's definitely one of the things that made Reefer kind of scary, because I ain't see that in the original, man. Maybe I just didn't go into a room that had that in it, but that was not in the original, I swear. This is only the tip of the iceberg. Leon is only seeing a glimpse of the small part of something that is much, much, much worse, creating urgency of what is to become of Ashley if she's not found. And to be honest, I think this allows room for a ton of creativity in the game, as it creates a mental mind game of what is to be expected. In Reefer, there is not even room to believe this cult is safe or friendly, because right off the back, Leon is kind of attacked and even witnesses an officer being burned at the stake alive. Damn, son. It didn't waste no time, son. Damn. This man was just trying to do his job. As you progress, you'll see several remains, skulls, portraits of Sadler as if he's some sort of deity, and even several notes hinting that people have been manipulated to believe Las Playas is a savior for them. The Zealots, in my opinion, were just as odd and skin-crawling as their original predecessors were, as well as just annoying, like, you know, this son of a bro, like, no one cared.
Gloria a las plagas! Gloria a las plagas!
However, those said exploding Plagas heads a lot more gross than the original counterparts, and just makes you feel like it's a bit too real. It's like seeing Victoria Newman in The Boys. You ever seen The Boys? You know how homegirls like exploding people's heads, bro? It's just, I don't like that. Just make sure you have that ibuprofen and Excedrin in the chamber, just to prepare yourself. Ow. I'm gonna turn those lights off real fast. Also, don't get me started on the Plagas infectors. A ton of these will in fact make your skin crawl. I'm terribly arachnophobic, and while it didn't trigger me like those disgusting creatures did in RE1R, I felt it creeping in. I really did. I felt it creeping in. Heebie-jeebies. Let's just keep it moving. FIFA presents so many events in a much darker, morbid point of view. You're aware of how far these people have gone, how far they're willing to go, and what they've done to innocent children and families. It feels like you're fighting a demonic entity more than anything, and I mean, and as a human, I'm pretty much screwed. I don't got no superpowers. I got one gun, bro. Like, come on, son. Get yourself together, man. Get some superpowers, bro. Call it a day. Combat in Reefer was similar to RE2R and RE3R. Smooth and clean, rather than tanked and clunky. Highly adjusted for its modern rendition that allows the players to easily traverse and get without taking a misstep. For the most part, when you think about it, the combat in Resident Evil has always been the same to its core. Slow and steady wins the race. Pace yourself and you'll have an easier time. The mental manipulation of you freaking out and causing you to run through all your ammo plays a part in its intensity. But these remakes, it's the same, it's just with a different point of view and a smoother combat system. Leon's moves are all similar to his OG counterpart, and they do a good job at not veering too far off from what the fans loved. The two big changes and fantastic additions that they did to the combat was the point that you could actually move around while firing. I realized how inconvenient this was in the original in so many parts, but it's a classic feature nonetheless. It made you feel trapped and secluded at times, and that factor is kind of what makes a good horror game a good horror, right? Right? Am I wrong? I'm not wrong, right? I'm good. I think it would kind of feel weird if they kept the stationary firing thing just from the overall feel and pacing of the game. The devs balanced it very well because there are several parts that are a giant pain in the ass, harder than before, easily. The most obvious example was the cabin standoff. In the original, it was enough to have just sufficient ammo, and it's to keep an eye out for open slots and windows. In the remake, this fight was significantly worse. You have 2 separate floors to watch this time, which I wasn't even aware of until I started getting overwhelmed. The restless leg syndrome was at 1000%, my guy, just shake. I found myself constantly strategizing and rushing to whatever boards I had, with wherever areas were harder to maneuver around, with the addition of enemies that come from the 2nd floor that I was not really aware of until I found out you could just knock the damn ladders down on the 2nd floor, and bruh, I was fucking done, son. The more you ran around during the fight, the more problems you found. There is also a ton of timing involved, and there are significantly more Las Plagas heads here, so the initial kills took longer. Luis, I felt, helped as much as he did in the original, just holding off enemies until they got closer to me. Melee combat was helpful as ever, as it makes a little more of a gap between you and enemies. Every inch helps. I'm mainly talking about the cabin battle here, but many of these factors can apply to much of the game. Overall, I did enjoy this battle more in the remakes, as it has a lot more substance to it. The original felt like a demo presented in Autodesk Maya compared to what this was. I'm a huge fan of intense, nerve-wracking fights, so while I was struggling, I was generally having a fucking blast coming up with different ideas and plans to get through this entire thing. I might have died so many times, but it was what it was. The chants and music along with this ride made this even more of a cinematic masterpiece. Like, it got further and further into the battle, but you hear like this music, this like these freaking chants, and it got louder and louder and louder, and I was like, I swear I'm close to the end of this freaking section, end of this damn battle. I died multiple times, but at the end of the day, it was dope. I loved every second of it. New crack in the ugly window was the Minotaur Brute. Sawboy returned, but compared to the Brute, he was basically walking apart. Brutes feel dangerous. They feel like they just taking one hit from them is gonna knock you on your ass. And they always grace with their presence during an intense ambush. However, I did absolutely love the parry option they gave you at this point, and I just kept playing with the enemies. It's so badass seeing Leon stop a chainsaw with a combat knife, which absolutely makes no sense. How do you do that? I always say with these new games and remakes, modernization has its huge perks, and when it shows, it really shows. Another factor that did make this game harder was one of the same features they used in 2 and 3 remakes when it came to the running feature for the enemies. They are a lot faster here as well in 4 compared to 2 and 3, and in 2 and 3 I did feel like they were a bit more regulated due to ambushes being more regulated to smaller settings, but they didn't hold back here in Reefer. Just be sure you got a lot of combat knives and boot knives in the chamber, because they really will be getting in your face pretty often with that nasty ass breath. Characters in Reaper have changed, some more than others, far and few in between. I want to direct my focus on who changed and how they were actually better than the original title. We've already talked about how different Leon was in RE2R, but in Reaper, I feel like he has more of a personality. I still hate his face shape though. They butchered my boy with this pointy ass chin, still looking like Kylo Ren. Bars. He's a lot more serious here and still has witty one-liners, just not much as he did in the original. Overall, I prefer the OG Leon being more goofy, got that more of a Deadpool feel, but it makes sense for him to tone it down due to the atmosphere of the game this time around. They kept some of his best one-liners, and that at least kept me satisfied. As we're talking about character changes, I want to give Ashley my praises. I feel like if you didn't like her in Reaper, then you probably just hating, or that like hate had to be motivated from her predecessor, bro, because she was a very likable character here, bro. Like, what do you mean? Her entire ordeal was that she was more of a nuisance and annoying in the original, but here she held her own weight. Compared to the original predecessor, she no longer needed help with ledges and ladders, didn't have a health bar, was a lot more fierce and level-headed as a character, and had an overall better appearance that was more fitting of her role and her age. In the original, she felt like more of a 10-year-old in a high schooler's body. Painful puberty. It's also super cool that they gave her a hiding feature as well as a staying closer and further to you during combat. So like, for example, if there was a situation where she kind of needed to stay back, you had that option. She didn't have her little Leon help whine, which was super annoying to a lot of people, but was replaced with a tear-jerking Leon no cry that made your heart fill up like you're fumbling the biggest bag or the baddest in your life. She could still get picked up and captured, but honestly, she just seems like a weaponless ally at this point. I never really had an issue with her in the original, but I really love the changes that were made for her here in Reaper. Also to add, her playable sequence was highly favorable. Yeah, if you were just restricted with a lantern, but that's what kind of made it fun. I feel like there were some Fatal Frame vibes. Did I say Fatal Fame vibes? No, I said Fatal Fame vibes. Fatal Frame vibes. That's what I'm talking about. But I also can imagine this is what a remake of Silent Hill would look like. Dark, uneasy, unsettling, and extremely vulnerable with a makeshift weapon that you don't have a choice but to use. Believe it or not, this was one of my favorite parts in Reaper, and if I'm being honest, I would have loved to see her make a return in the series with this new character. Was she good? Was she dope? Did y'all like the changes that they made to Ashley? About her playable sequence, did y'all enjoy? Would y'all rather have it out? Did you enjoy it? Would you rather have it longer? Let's talk about it in the comments. Speaking of returns, this motherfucker was gold in his return. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on him, but the merchant was a huge step up. There isn't ever any backstory on him, of course, but he seems more human these days. He still got superpowers, he still managed to teleport himself into enemy territory without being detected. Game logic. I also love that there's a new crafting feature here. No longer were you restricted to just crafting gunpowders and herbs, but you could combine gemstones and artifacts, making your sell inventory more rewarding. That's right, sell inventory. I found myself constantly saving materials and treasures since it was a lot more worthwhile. However, with that being said, nothing will ever be his infamous greeting.
What are you buying?
One of my favorite characters I cannot say was better than the original was Ramon Salazar. In my opinion, he had such a huge change. Better for Reaper, worse for me, but you know, me right, I'm just one dude, it don't really matter, let's just keep it moving. No longer having witty banter offs through comms, Salazar shows up looking like a shrunken George Washington or like a Georgia Washington, bro. Like, what? Look at this little and tell me he does not look like someone's 17th century grandma, bro. Don't lie, cuz, come on. He seems so much less involved this time around since he only shows up in person. I honestly do feel like most of the game you get more intel on Sadler as it progresses rather than Salazar, and Salazar is a more of a super side character in comparison to his original, in which they seem more of a team. I do believe his new character is portrayed better than what his backstory is, but he was apparently a fucking Damien from the Omen or something. I don't fucking know, man. Kid off his maid. He was literally just Bebe's kid's turn on a devil trigger mode. It was wild shit, man. What do you think about Salazar this time around? Just like him? Did you like his design? Did you hate his design? Did you feel like his character fit better for his backstory. Last character I do want to mention is my boy Luis. Now Luis is one of my favorite side characters of all time. Mans is just too smooth. With the obvious differences in his appearance, which I personally can't tell which is better, his most drastic change was his storyline in association with Ada. I feel like they made their relationship a bit more colorful. The depiction of their relationship was portrayed better. In the original, it felt like this might have been the first time she's seeing Luis in person, whereas in the remake, they've spoken numerous times in person. However, the greatest addition to Luis's involvement in the story this time was the minecart ride. Bro, this was not an enjoyable part for me in the original and was just straight up annoying. In Reefer, it was significantly better. Super fun, a lot more smooth, a lot more variation, and with Luis there to add some commentary to the situation, I wouldn't have had it any other way. When I noticed that you have to keep the cart on the track, I was kind of worried that it was going to be a pain again, but it just made it a blast. This was honestly one of the greatest changes in my opinion, and to be honest, I wish it was longer. Just like I wish Ashley's playable portion was longer as well. They turned my most dull and annoying parts of the original to my faves, and that's something that I can get behind. Pouring out for the GOAT, man. Pouring out for the GOAT.
Get the break! What? Are you serious?
So I can sit here and talk about this game for hours, and as you can see, this video is already mad long. So circling back to my original question, as I've discussed with a few different scenes, different portions, why do people think Reefer is better than the original? Well, to be honest, I think it comes down to a few things. Story and character depth and variation. Example, when it comes to Luis and Jack Krauser, who I haven't even talked about until now, they were kind of underdeveloped in the original compared to the Reefer counterparts. Luis had more screen time and dialogue, which gave him more of a connection to the player. His death had more impact, as well as his redemption arc. They played out this perfectly and gave Luis and Leon more of a friendship. You can even see Ashley's sadness when she heard the news about his sacrifice. Krauser is also written better, as they provided more of a backstory along with their training scenes to show how much they came up together. In the original, this was largely left out, so you didn't really feel much of Krauser. Yeah, he was a cool character, but by the end of the battle, in Reefer, you felt like you put more of an end of a chapter to Leon's life, rather just another boss that he had beef with in the game. They also portrayed Leon's disappointment in his character really well for this, significantly better. Yeah, he was a bit of an asshole, and he really just tried to murder me in cold blood, but we've been through a lot. He made me the specialist I am today, and it's really unfortunately sad that I had to do this and had to come to this situation. As far as variation, everything about Reefer felt organic, new, fresh, and with each turn and level, it contained more puzzles, but decently leveled puzzles that even out the pacing of the game. Nothing too hard, but nothing too easy. Optional backtracking was more of a thing here, which modernization elements it allowed. There's a lot more side quest and expansion when it comes to certain parts of the game. The crafting and combining system added more decision making properties, as well as reducing the feel of repetition. You didn't really feel like you were selling the same things. It felt like every treasure you found was something new, or something could be changed to make something new. The original was flooded with quick time events, and while this was fun for the time, it really wouldn't work here as well, and it also lowers the repetition. The boss battles in Reefer presented more mobility and freedom, as well as fixed hacks. Most boss battles from the original are very limited when you look at it, and I won't entirely blame it on the game. It was just a technological ability at the time. A fair example of this was the Batoris Mendez fight, as he was pretty limited on what he can do, and in Reefer, he really is more of a threat, and you are essentially forced to have variation within your combat tactics for beating him. Overall though, he's still pretty disgusting. Motherfucker's gross. Look at this, bruh. The game itself is just scarier overall. I talked about this earlier in the video, so I won't go much further into detail, but the gothic folklore that comes with it and the cult elements through the game turns the fear up to 1,000. The sound design is 10 times better as well, and I can't go this whole video with not bringing up the regenerators. I looked forward to this in Reefer the entire time, absolutely the most, and it did not disappoint. Like, I knew immediately when this was coming up in the game, son, and it still scared the fuck out of me. They made this portion worse than last time, managing to put you in a situation to maneuver through them through nearly total darkness. That was such a fun time. Fucking terrible, but loved every second of it. And these motherfuckers got legs this time too. They actually can run. They actually kind of fast, and they got gum powers, which I was not prepared for. Such a ride, my boy. Such a ride. The only part in the game that I personally still enjoyed the least was the island area. I still feel like this is more action heavy, which realistically was so far gone in the original. I thought they couldn't have really changed this much without making it a huge drastic change in the story. But you know, it kind of is what it is. It's kind of a done deal with that. You know, I just really wish they made it kind of more horror focused, but yeah. So I understand the original RE4 has a huge place in the hearts of fans, especially when it comes to nostalgia. When you think about it, Reaper portrays and presents it in a better foundation. It's more challenging, it's more in depth, and when you take those emotional attachments away and think of it on a different level, it builds on what the original had been missing. We're not gonna sit here and diss the original. It broke barriers, it shattered dimensions, it won awards, and hell, bro, it's probably still winning the awards to this day, and it's being ported to several systems as we still speak. Like, even if RE4R exists, they're still gonna be porting the original to newer consoles and fucking systems and remakes. Trust me, that's just canon facts. And as the real world says, each generation has to do better than the original. Both are masterpieces. We wouldn't have Reaper without the OG. What did y'all think about Remake? Did you like it less? Did you like it more? Did you like it about the same? Would you like to see Ashley make a return in the series as a new character? I don't know, I just had to throw that in there because, I don't know, man, I really liked her new character. I think she was pretty dope, but it is what it is. I just wanted to throw that one out there. Let's just talk about it in the comments. Lastly, thanks for everyone for coming over to the channel. I greatly appreciate it, and a special thanks if you still here at the end of the video. It's a long one, justifiably so. I had a lot of fun talking about this one. Much appreciated. To the horror people, to the Resident Evil fans, I greatly appreciate it. Thanks, y'all. Lastly, be safe out there, guys. This is Kaimaxz. Later.
I've obtained the amber.
Excellent.
Just one question. What are you planning to do with this?
We do not pay you to ask questions. All you need to know is a new dawn is breaking. 100 will give their lives so that just one may live. I am expediting that change.
So, we're talking millions of casualties.
Billions.